Hello and welcome. I'm Sima Katauka and you're watching the World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. US President Donald Trump has threatened escalating tariffs on key European allies unless the US is allowed to buy Greenland. Duties would start at 10% on February 1st and rise to 25% by June. European leaders have rejected the demand, warning it could damage NATO unity, derail trade deals, and deepen transatlantic tensions. Syrian government forces have advanced into Kurdish Halt areas near the Euphrates, taking raqqa and key dams despite US calls to stop. Kurdish-led SDF has accused the army of violating a withdrawal deal and warned it would fight to hold remaining towns and oil fields. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei has accused President Trump of fueling deadly protests that has killed over 3,000 people. Khamenei has called Trump a criminal, while Iran blamed the unrest on US and Israeli interference amid mass unrests and internet shutdowns. EU and Mercosur leaders have signed the landmark free trade agreement in Paraguay after 25 years of negotiations, paving the way for what would become the EU's largest ever trade deal. The accord covers the EU with Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay, but still requires approval from the European Parliament. New York City Mayor Mamdani has appointed Tricia Shimomura as the city's new Parks Department Commissioner, tasking her with managing more than 30,000 acres of land. Mamdani has praised Shimomura's decade-long record of public service, while Shimomura called the role an honor and vowed to make a difference. According to official results reported by Ugandan media, Ugandan President Yoweri Museveni won a seventh term with 71.65% of the vote, defeating opposition leader Bobi Wine, who won 24.70%. Wine is expected to reject the outcome, alleging an unfair election marred by an internet shutdown as tensions remain high following protests and security crackdowns. According to IMF statements, the International Monetary Fund has approved a $261 million disbursement for Ethiopia after completing the fourth review of its 48th month extended credit facility, bringing total IMF support under the program to just over $2.18 billion. Elon Musk is demanding up to $134 billion from OpenAI and Microsoft, claiming they profited from his early funding and support. The companies call the claim baseless as the case heads to trial in April. Now for this hour, we start with US and Greenland. A bipartisan U.S. congressional delegation visited Denmark and Greenland yesterday to reassure both countries following U.S. President Donald Trump's threats to impose tariffs on nations that do not support a U.S. takeover of Greenland. Leading the delegation, Senator Chris Coons has expressed concern about the rising tensions and stressed the need to de-escalate the situation. The senator has contrasted his position with that of the White House, where President Trump has repeatedly insisted that the U.S. should control Greenland, claiming it is essential for U.S. security due to the island's strategic location and mineral resources. However, Coons has said that there were no current security threats to Greenland and has called for a political solution to the dispute. Meanwhile, Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has also weighed in on the U.S.-Greenland row, stating that security concerns in the Arctic should be addressed within the NATO framework. Speaking during an official visit to Japan, Meloni has recognized the legitimacy of U.S. security concerns, but she has said that military intervention in Greenland would be very difficult and believes that the ongoing row would require political resolution. Let's now listen into a few of her comments.
Io ritengo che la questione del rafforzamento della sicurezza e della presenza degli alleati in Groenlandia sia un tema serio, che però sta nell'ambito del dialogo all'interno dell'Alleanza Atlantica, cioè la Groenlandia va considerato territorio, diciamo così, di responsabilità della NATO. La questione che gli americani pongono è una questione seria, ovviamente, e credo che diciamo, il ragionamento di rafforzare la nostra presenza sia un ragionamento sicuramente necessario da fare all'interno dell'Alleanza Atlantica, ma credo che quello però sia l'ambito nel quale discutere questa materia, anche per quello che eventualmente riguarda insomma, la nostra presenza. Voi avete visto che l'Italia ha presentato una sua strategia per l'Artico, perché anche noi comprendiamo ovviamente quanto sia strategico e quanto sia importante. Io ho già proposto.
Now for this discussion, we welcome Mr. Glenn Grant. He's an ex-advisor to Defense Minister of Ukraine and geopolitical commentator, joins us live from Riga. Thank you very much, Mr. Grant, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, looking at this, what would a diplomatic solution look like if there is any between US's increasing pressure towards Greenland and Denmark on acquiring Greenland?
Well, this is really difficult to understand because what we're looking at is Trump is basically taking this out of the bottom of his soul as a real estate person. He sees a big piece of real estate and he wants it. This is not about strategy. This is not about threats from Russia or China. It's not even about minerals. It's about greed on the part of Trump. And therefore, getting a diplomatic solution is extremely difficult because he's got nowhere to go on this. It's not like he can back down in any way from his own greed. And this is going to be very difficult for the Europeans because they're judging this in terms of what Trump is actually saying, which is, about the threat from Russia and China, which I don't believe is there at the moment at all, and the minerals, which they could actually go in and negotiate with Denmark about firms coming in and getting minerals. So when you're on a personal greed thing, I'm not sure exactly what the Europeans and other NATO members can actually do about this, except give in to Trump, but they don't want to. So I see a big standoff coming here, and this is going to drag on for a bit longer. It's a difficult one.
Yeah. And what are the cards that Denmark or EU can play in countering this, like you mentioned, Trump's? It's in Trump's nature.
I mean, the cards they play are really only two. The NATO card to the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who are already telling Trump that this is not a good idea and it's probably illegal, and I wonder if they're ordered to do this, which it appears to be quite likely, whether they will actually follow through with this or whether they'll find good excuses for not having military intervention. The other card is, of course, the economic one that the Europeans can play, which is matching Trump's tariff game, but they don't want to do that because it's pointless. It's pointless, and it doesn't serve to help anybody economically. It just is a mess. So I suppose they can all gang up on Trump and go and face up to him. Because if they don't face up to him, my line of questioning will be is what's next? Because Trump is insatiable in these things. After Greenland, does he want Svalbard at the top of Norway as well? So I think we're in for a difficult few weeks on this matter.
And as you mentioned, it's really difficult. What's your analysis on how can, other than making statements, or what's your take on the defense strategy of, like we saw NATO forces or German and Denmark forces say that they will increase forces around Greenland to protect Greenland. How do you, what's your analysis? Yes.
Well, I mean, this is difficult. I mean, around Greenland, all you can really put is submarines and on Greenland you put aircraft. But I don't think either of those things are going to soothe Trump in any way, because he doesn't understand these things anyway. So if someone says that there are 3 or 4 now submarines will stop anything, he has no grasp of what those submarines can do or what they are. So the Europeans are a bit stuck with that, because they really, at the moment, they have not got forces available or the money to actually to set up and start putting great defences on Greenland that really and honestly are unnecessary at the moment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Grant, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we stay on this news. Now, protesters in Greenland have gathered on Saturday to express opposition to U.S. President Donald Trump's demands, where he wanted the Arctic island to be ceded to the United States, led by Prime Minister Hans Fredrik Nielsen. Hundreds of demonstrators marched in the capital of Nuuk, carrying flags and banners heading towards the U.S. consulate. We have been able to gather more voices from the protests. Let's listen in.
It's very tiring and it takes a lot of energy, and what we want to use our energy on is just to live here, live with each other, live in peace and in the country that we love and we respect. We know the Arctic, we know our country, and we are the ones to care for it, and it's been quite a big pressure from the whole world for us to take decisions.
Very clear that we want our own country for ourselves, and we won't receive anything from Trump no matter what.
Now for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. Grant. He joins us live from Riga. Thank you very much, Mr. Grant, for staying with us. Now, looking at all this, excuse my language, but is Europe this helpless that, Russia can come, do that to Ukraine, and now US is threatening to do something not similar, but yes, invade or take over Greenland?
I don't think you can sort of compare the two, but I think Europe is in despair. Not helpless, just in despair at the nonsensity of all this, because the prime problem at the moment is Russia, and there's no question about that. That is the number one thing that has to be defeated and beaten for the European continent to be safe. So to have one of your allies actually threatening you and threatening part of an alliance is bizarre beyond belief. And I think that the fact that this is so bizarre is actually causing big problems across Europe, because there's no collective wisdom on how to deal with this, and there's no sort of really strong response that they can make that doesn't actually harm NATO and doesn't harm themselves to a degree. So I think it's just the unexpectedness of it and the ridiculousness of it is the most difficult thing for Europe at the moment. I mean, Europe can defend Greenland, there's no question. But why should it want to when there's no real need, apart from Trump's stupidity? Why should it want to? Why should they want to waste resources, those resources that are needed badly to go to Ukraine in the fight against Russia?
Right. Thank you for highlighting that and staying with us throughout our news. Thank you very much, Mr. Grant. Now we move on to Middle East. The Syrian army is continuing to push into Kurdish-held territory despite U.S. calls to halt its advance in the towns and the area in its Syria's north. According to media reports, the army took over the northern city of Tabqa and its adjacent dam, as well as the major Freedom Dam, formerly known as the Bath, west of the Syrian city of Raqqa. Earlier, the Syrian army also claimed that they had seized control over 2 oil fields in the country's north that had been held by Kurdish forces. Meanwhile, the Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces accused Damascus of betrayal over withdrawal deal and reported fighting between the two sides in the country's north. Now, for this discussion, we welcome Major General Dr. S.B. Astana. She's an international strategic and military analyst, joins us live from New Delhi. Thank you very much, Major General, for joining us. Welcome to NewsX World. Now, how dangerous is this escalating situation in the north of Syria, and what should Syrian armies advance into Kurdish-held areas signal about their strategy towards minority-controlled regions for now?
Thanks for getting me on the show.
Thank you.
First, let me highlight to the viewers
Yes.
that HTS, that is the Syrian government as of now under al-Shara, was when it took over. Syria remains divided amongst various power groups who hold different parts of the country. Now, the Turkish-backed SNA was also there near Aleppo, and the Kurdish-led SDF made certain advances. In fact, the power arrangement initially was that they will not make those advances, especially towards Aleppo, and there was fighting in Aleppo. Now, the al-Sharas, that is the Syrian forces, have now pushed back the Kurdish forces, and now you see the dilemma of the USA. As far as al-Shara is concerned, that is the current Syrian government, the leader was a Al-Qaeda terrorist who has been supported by USA to topple the ruler there. At the same time, so they are in some manner sympathetic towards him. Kurdish forces have fought with them, fought with US forces, and have been very good fighters to checkmate the ISIS in Iraq and Syria at some point of time. And therefore, American sympathies are also there with Kurdish forces. Now, both of them are actually expected to live together within their areas, but al-Shara insists that there should be only one armed forces, there should be only one government, and that he should rule, and others should surrender and give up their territory. This idea was also echoed by Turkey, because Turkey also wants to, Turkey used to be seeing the Kurdish forces also as a threat, because there is, they had the ambition of Greater Kurdistan at some point of time. So considering this quagmire, the problem is that both sides US is involved. US has drawn a line to say that, okay, the Syrian forces that is under al-Shara should not cross the river and beyond a point. So they are trying to somehow control that situation by controlling both sides. So that's where it stands. But notwithstanding that, Syria has a lot of problems. Israeli defenses forces are also there. Then Druze, they want to help the Druze community, and they also hold some part of Syria. Similarly, there are other groups as well which are there in Syria, which have not been completely eliminated. So I think Syria still has fair amount of challenges before it can show any kind of stability.
And so what exactly is US's motive and US's role, and what can US do over there to make sure it doesn't escalate further?
See, the US initial aim was to somehow remove the old ruler who in their opinion was supporting Russia. So
Yes.
that was the singular aim, and post his removal, USA did not had a good strategic plan in place how to govern Syria. At the same time, Israelis also wanted to make best use of this chaos. So they also extended their territory beyond Golan Heights. They were already occupying Golan Heights of Syria. They moved a little ahead and under the pretext that they need to save Druze and they also need their security. They also started targeting the military assets of al-Shara's regime. Now this shows that US actually did not had a good strategic plan to govern, because everybody was trying to make the best of the situation. Even Turkey was also trying to make the best of the situation to somehow marginalize Kurds. So under these circumstances, I think as of now, US has a balancing role, that it has to perhaps control all the balancing parties to see some kind of peace or semblance in Syria, and as Trump keeps promising, rebuilding Syria. Now I don't know whether he'll be able to rebuild Syria or otherwise under this chaos, but notwithstanding that, that is what he shows as a declared aim, to rebuild Syria under al-Shara.
Right. With that, I would like to thank Major General Dr. S.B. Astana for joining us today and sharing that insight with us on NewsX World. Now we move the focus on to Europe. A Ukrainian delegation has arrived in the United States for talks in a US-led diplomatic push to end the nearly 4-year-old war as Russians' attacks again took aim at Ukraine's power grid, cutting electricity and heating in freezing temperatures. Kirill Budanov, who is the Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky's chief of staff, has said that he arrived in the US to discuss the details of the peace agreement. Writing on the Telegram messaging app, Budanov has said that he, together with Ukrainian negotiators Rustom Umerov and David Arakamia, would meet with US envoy Steve Witkoff and President Donald Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner and US Army Secretary Dan Driscoll. Let's in fact listen into what Zelensky has shared.
Сьогодні ж українська делегація вже у Сполучених Штатах Америки. Рустем Умєров, Кирило Буданов, Давид Арахамія. Ближче до вечора за київським часом я очікую перші доповіді щодо зустрічі. Головне завдання для української делегації дати всю реальну інформацію про те, що відбувається, про наслідки російських ударів, в тому числі наслідком цього терору є дискредитація дипломатичного процесу.
Now for this discussion, we welcome back Mr. Glenn Grant. He's an expert advisor to Defense Minister of Ukraine and geopolitical commentator, joins us live from Latvia. Thank you very much, Mr. Grant, for staying with us. Now, as we were talking about Greenland also coming into picture, how critical is this timing for Ukraine to, lead or to make sure that US understand the urgency of, a ceasefire deal and takes this upcoming talk very seriously?
There are a lot of things at play here. The team is a very strange one, given that Zelensky is in trouble at home because of anti-corruption within his own team. One of the people who has actually been sort of given warnings of suspicion is Umerov, who is actually on this team, and the second one, which is Aramir, is one of the most unpopular people in the country, which says that Zelensky is hanging on to a close, tight-knit control of this. And the two things thereafter is American guarantees that their security will be upheld if they accept an agreement with Russia, and they're not going to get that. America is not going to agree to anything that actually puts them face to face with Russia, because Trump is actually working on behalf of Russia. And the other thing is the financial agreement of money effectively from US and US companies to rebuild Ukraine. Well, I don't know why they want this on a peace agreement, because this is going to come anyway, whether anybody writes an agreement or doesn't write an agreement, because companies are already starting to come in. But the big question about this is Russia. This cannot be a peace agreement if Russia is not involved in it. And Russia has made it clear that there's no peace. So this is more a game between Trump and Ukraine and Trump, than it is any real peace agreement. Nobody sees Russia accepting anything because they think they're winning, and they think that they're going to keep going until Ukraine actually capitulates, which they're not going to do.
Right. And so Zelensky, doesn't he have any other person? Are these two people, who have corruption charges or who are involved in these scandals, are the best people that Zelensky could have sent to talks? And also from Trump's, team, it's Jared Kushner's son-in-law and Steve Witkoff. So from US side, isn't there anyone else that Trump could have sent, or Trump could have maybe appointed as a diplomat over here to talk this out? Yeah.
Both cases are absolutely right, and it's a good question. Is why both sides are sending teams of people that the leaders trust, rather than actually a proper diplomatic team to do diplomacy, which comes down to the fact that what we're really talking about is money. Let's get back to let's be honest about this. We're talking about
Yes.
money and the movement of money, and money to Ukraine that can then be stolen and that can then find its way back into the coffers of Trump. We're not talking about any great peace deal because both sides know that Russia's not going to play on this.
And lastly, so last week, actually this week, we saw President Macron and a few other leaders hint that they are considering to open channels to talk directly with Russia for the sake of Ukraine, right? What's your take on that? Do you think that's going to be more? Is it for the better if they talk directly instead of involving Jared Kushner, Steve Witkoff, and the business or family-oriented delegation through U.S.?
Now, the answer to that is no. I mean, it's actually worse, not better, because all it shows all it shows Putin is that the West is beginning to crack, and they're getting weaker. I mean, Macron has been talking to Putin solidly throughout this, and has got absolutely nowhere with it, and people just think he's a joke for trying it. Meloni seems to think she's got some sort of sway or power, but neither case is true. The fact is that Putin wants this to happen because he wants this dissension between the actual NATO groupings. It's part of his strategy to crack NATO and break up NATO, a strategy that Trump is helping him with at the moment. So these things are dangerous. They need solidarity and they need one voice, not several voices with weak things to talk about that they cannot actually deliver, because they can't deliver what Ukraine wants, and therefore there's nothing they can do to talk to Russia that's of any value.
With that, I would like to thank Mr. Glenn Grant for joining us today and sharing that insight throughout our news. Thank you very much. Now we move on to Chile. Chile has ordered multiple evacuation as fast-moving forest fires have threatened communities in the southern Biobío and Ñuble regions. Emergency alerts were sent to mobile phones in affected areas. Fire crews are battling the blazes with all available resources while also responding to 10 other active fires. Authorities say the evacuations are preventive and warn residents not to return until cleared. The public is urged to follow official guidance and cooperate with emergency teams. Now, if we move on to Middle East, Saudi Arabia has become the first country in the world to approve Anktiva, a new cancer therapy for advanced lung and bladder cancers. The Saudi Food and Drug Authority, also known as SFDA, has granted conditional approval for this treatment, making it a landmark step in cancer care. Anktiva is a treatment that uses the body's immune system to target and destroy cancer cells, offering a promising new option for patients with non-small cell lung cancer whose disease has progressed after standard therapies. The approval is based on clinical evidence showing that Anktiva may improve survival in patients with advanced NSCLC and a 62% complete response rate in bladder cancer trials. The SFDA's decision comes with a conditional approval status, meaning further studies are required to confirm the long-term benefits of the treatment for now. That's all we have time for. Keep watching NewsX World for more news updates from around the world.